I remember some teaching on never be angry with God. Like, that is sinful, right? Sometimes, we just got to let it rip before God.
Disillusioned by the church, unsure of your identity? What can you find in your own faith? Let's talk about it with Aimee Byrd on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
Hey, we're so glad you're here. In case you're wondering, I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. Matthew Porter, our executive producer, is here. Matthew just learned from his kids that lava is really earth gravy. You're going to use
up.
that?
Yeah.
Listen, you can win some money in a contest sometime.
What are the potatoes, though?
Oh.
Ooh.
And our producer, Jinx, is in the little glass booth looking for a fun night out. Jinx says medieval times. You can watch people fight while you eat. Or alternatively, you can go to Waffle House.
I did medieval times for my birthday once. That was fun. Get the royalty package if you go, though.
Our one-man IT department, John Myers, is in his tech bunker. He identifies with tired. And Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. George says, remember in Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, when the old fisherman fights for days and days to land a giant marlin, and then finally does, but tragically, in the process of getting it back to shore, the bloody marlin is repeatedly torn apart by hungry sharks, so that by the time the fisherman does get home, a ravaged carcass, stay with me, a ravaged carcass is the only proof he even accomplished anything. Anyway, George says, happy tax day. And Kathy Wyatt is the soft feminine side of the program. Listen, I read them. I don't write them.
Matthew,
God bless you for reading that, Steve.
Matthew, that took a lot of work. I gotta give you
And now
credit
the whole
on that one.
interview,
I haven't had
you
to
set the
focus that hard in a
time.
long time.
Whiz.
I didn't know they'd be learning.
And Kathy Wyatt is the soft feminine side of the program. How soft and feminine? Enough to single-handedly balance this mob of manliness.
You
on
have
this
no idea.
program. I wasn't requiring a comment.
Oh, okay.
You're getting one.
Aimee Byrd is one of our favorite people. She's a writer, speaker, blogger, podcaster, and former coffee shop owner. Didn't know that, did you? Her articles have appeared in First Things. That, by the way, is my favorite magazine. Modern Reformation, Credo magazine, among others. She's authored several books, and the one we're going to talk about today, which I hold in my nicotine-stained fingers, is titled Saving Face, Finding Myself, God, and One Another Outside a Defaced Church.
Mm-hmm.
Aimee, thanks for being with us. Listen,
It's great to be back.
you know what? You're gonna have to tell us a little bit, or we're not gonna understand what you're talking about the myth of Psyche and Cupid et al., and kind of let us know where you're coming from and the imagery, and then we'll see and understand the profound insights of this book.
Yes, I couldn't name my book Till We Have Faces because I would have a lot of SEO competition with C.S. Lewis.
That was his last novel, by the way.
Yeah, and it's my favorite novel, and it's the retelling of the myth of Cupid and Psyche, and we get this myth retold through Psyche's sister, Orwell. And it's really interesting because Lewis, is writing in first person as a woman very convincingly in this novel. So I find that right there just super impressive. But in this story, Orwell is also kind of building her case against the gods. She's got this journal through, all of the lobs that she is suffering in life. The love that she has for her beautiful sister Psyche and how she cares for her, the unrighteousness in those around her, and she sees herself as the loving one, the giving one, the righteous one, the good ruler. And so all this time, the gods don't answer her, so she just complains and complains in her journal, and she gets to the end of her self-righteous life that she's built and with all of her losses. And she has this vision, and finally, she's before the gods, and she can read her complaint. And she's stripped naked. The veil that she's worn to cover her ugliness is stripped from her as well. And they tell her that she could read her complaint. And she looks down, and her journal is all of a sudden seems different. It's like smaller, and the print in it looks kind of like angry scribble. Nonetheless, she boldly starts reading from her book of complaints and reading and reading and ranting. And she realized something. She's reading the same exact thing over and over and over again. Like as she turns the page, it's just all the same. And the gods interrupt her and they say, "Are you finished? And do you have your answer?" And she realizes then that, that her complaint was the answer. Like, how in the world can she expect the gods to answer her face to face until she has a face, until we have faces? And so what that means is she spent her whole life building this persona of who she thought was goodness, who she thought that she should be and what she thought God should be even. But now that she's lived this life and she's before the gods naked and barefaced, she realizes that it was all a mask, that she had it all wrong. Her ideas of love and giving and life, all of it. So that is kind of the metaphor that I'm using in saving face, that we all need to find our own faces, that we do build this persona maybe in the first part of our lives, adult lives, where we are becoming who we think we're supposed to be and what we think goodness is. But there comes a time, and usually it's through some sort of loss or crisis, that we're kind of confronted with ourselves. And we realize that we've stuffed down a bunch of things that we thought were maybe not good about ourselves, that the messages of society and culture and our family and our churches have maybe told us weren't good. And it's time to kind of take them out of the bag and re-examine them and really find out, like integrate who our real self is.
Oh, man. You've heard a description of the church and a description of me, by the way. I wear a mask, but I don't do it for all the reasons Aimee mentioned. I do it because I need this job. And I like eating, okay? Aimee, we know some of your story. And you're still a part of the church. What are you, crazy?
Yeah, I'm crazy, all right.
Why do you do that?
Well, Christ continues to meet me. I think in the disillusionment that I've been through, there were a lot of questions. Things that I thought were good and true have now turned on me. The people who I thought were to care for my soul turned on me. So yeah, it would be easy to say, okay, the church is a bunch of hypocrites, I'm out, but I don't think that's what's real. I don't think that that hypocrisy is, a proper representation of Christ's love for his people. He is real. He has met me. His realness has met me. And he's met me in his word. He's met me through the faces of others. And that's something I really want to emphasize in this book is, when we reflect on the divine face, I think there's a mirror held out for us to see ourselves. But he uses the faces of others as mirrors to show us himself as well and to show us who we are.
Kind of scary, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
This is not a brief for taking the mask off. In fact, I just decided I'm going to get several. And nobody will ever know
Funniest
the real
response I've
person.
had to this book.
When we come back, we're running up to the end of this section, but I'd like to find out how you see your face by looking at the faces of other people. That's an interesting thought and a true one, and you're able to see God's face there too. So that's a long way around the barn to answer the question I asked Aimee, why are you still a part of the church? Because maybe you find there what you won't find anywhere else. If you can get over all of the phoniness and the hypocrisy and the shallowness, you'll find Jesus there and probably some of the most important friends you'll ever have in this life. The book, and you got to read it. It'll blow you away. Saving Face, Finding Myself, God, and One Another Outside the Face Church. Don't go anywhere. This is hard work, and we're going to have some cookies and milk and rest and come back. Thanks for joining us. We're talking with Aimee Byrd, and her new book is called Saving Face, Finding Myself, God, and One Another Outside the Defaced Church. Aimee, by the way, is still a part of the church, and for some very good reasons. One of the things you say is that looking at other people who I guess have who have been defaced, we see something of God and ourselves. Explain yourself.
Yeah, right. Well, philosopher Emmanuel Levinas says that theology begins in the face of the neighbor. And he talks about every time we have an encounter with somebody else's face, like what he calls the naked face, when we can get behind the countenance, the mask, that is being portrayed there, we are kind of seeing that person's vulnerability then. And because of that, we have this opportunity to either bless this person or to liquidate them, really. And this is one reason why we wear masks so much, because they're protective. And so when he talks about this encounter, he says, really, this is why it's righteous for us to even be, because my naked face summons you not to kill it, not to liquidate me. Thou shalt not kill. He talks about that commandment. And I think on the reverse side, then we can say that my face then is beckoning you to love, to see Christ in me. That whole verse where Jesus says, I was thirsty, but you didn't give me water. I was in prison, but you didn't come visit me. I needed clothing and you did not give it to me. To see that call to love, if Christ really does, if we believe this mystical, amazing truth that Christ dwells within the soul of every believer, then we are encountering God when we are encountering his people. And I think there's something major going on there too, because we can't even see our own face. And that, I think, is a metaphor to something much deeper. And we come into this world looking for a face. looking for a face to delight in our face, because then we know that we are loved. Then we know that we matter. It's drawing out to see somebody else's love for us, who we are. And I think ultimately that's because we are all looking for God's face. And I think that's one of the ultimate longings we have is the beatific vision, to be before the face of God and to see his face delighting in our face. And we can be that for each other now. Like, even if you think of the benediction in Numbers 6, 24 through 26, we're sent out of church often with this benediction. The Lord bless you, the Lord keep you, the Lord's face shine upon you. Wow, that's huge. The Lord's face shine upon you. The Lord be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Is that just something future? Why are we being sent out with that back into the world? And I think it is something future. When we can behold that in the face of Jesus Christ and his delight in us. But it's also, I think, part of our vocation as Christians, as the church, is to bless others, to be that for others, for our face to shine upon others, to show, you know what? It is a blessing that you are here today, Steve, and to show that in my countenance towards you. So I think that's a big part of being the church, and I want to be a part of that.
So good.
Aimee, one of the great things about this book, all your books, is you don't just talk about things academically. You put your own story into, you have skin in the game, to the point in this one where you share like journal entries. So I'm curious to know what has gone on with you since we last met, with your last book, and what are some of the events that led to, that inspired this book coming about?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the journal entries particularly focused too on just the struggle and finding a new church. I was kind of hoping that after going through all that spiritual abuse, that when I finally was brave enough and had the clarity to see that, okay, there's not going to be reform here in this denomination, like I need to actually go somewhere else. I thought, okay, I've been through a lot for 2 years. Like, God, it's time to find me a good place to heal and, show me what your church is made of. And it wasn't like that. That's not how God answered it. So it's been a struggle, and I journal through that some in the book. And I wanted to do that too because I wanted others who are struggling to see, like, okay, this is life. When life gets what some people call lifey, and you have to really deal with it. It's not always this perfect ending and then Aimee found this wonderful community and lived happily ever after. No, it's been a struggle. It's been actually a fight to even love Christ's church. My husband and I right now we've been attending a Methodist church for about a little over a year, and we've been able to unlearn a lot that we needed to unlearn while there. And a lot of healing has happened. It's a good church in a lot of ways, but we still don't really feel like it's our landing place. So, we're not in this and now everything's happily ever after in the church. I'm still going through some struggles with God to really have, deep connection in his church. So, I want to be honest about that because I think that's the picture for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're maybe looking for something that doesn't exist.
I'm looking for a unicorn.
I left a church, 3-4 years ago, and I've never done that before. And I really thought I'd find something better, but I found a bunch of sinners there too. And it's just been awful.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't want to belabor the issue about the leaving of the church, but I can identify with that. Again, I've only done it once in my life also, and I think the thing that became it took a long time, but the thing that became so important to me was the reality that given perhaps a different situation than the situation I dealt with, and we're coming up on a break, so we'll probably have to address this on the other side, but the particular situation that caused me to feel like it was time dealt with specific circumstances. Had there been a situation that involved completely different circumstances that were not something that was tugging at my heart that I felt constrained about, I could have been one of those people that stayed while I was watching somebody else who was going through great consternation leaving, and looking back at that after I found another church, which I'm enjoying very much, but I don't for a minute think that there's, not issues there as well. It's like you begin to realize that it's like a coin. You flip the coin and you can see on both sides, and it helps you so much with it being or not being, hopefully, as critical.
All right, we'll talk about that on the other side. By the way, Kathy's become a Lutheran. She's like a former smoker. She's become a fanatic Lutheran. Drives me nuts. And if you used to smoke, just leave me alone, okay? Just want you to know that's my true face. We'll return. We're hanging out with Aimee Byrd, and you can keep up with her at Aimee, that's AIMEEBYRD.com, and on X at Aimee Byrd, PYW.
Aimee, just briefly, when I did leave the church, when I got on the other side of a lot of anger about it and looked back at it, my analysis was that had the situations been switched around a little bit with a different issue being the case that was being dealt with, I could have been one of the ones who was staying, that I was throwing rocks at and being very angry and upset with, while somebody else was being me who was leaving. And when I finally got to that point, it was very much an eye-opener for me in terms of my own shortcomings, my own sin, as far as realizing that, as Steve always says, there is no sin of which I'm not capable. So it's like the leaving, there is a point at which you do have to go, but there has to be a right way and a wrong way to do it.
Right.
And I don't know that you can be at the right way right when it happens. Does hopefully as time goes by, when you get an attack of sanity or you listen to what God's maybe been trying to tell you for a long period of time, you get to a point where you have a little bit more rational behavior or attitude about it. Yes? No?
Yeah, I like that.
That was Orla's experience, wasn't it, Aimee? I mean, she had just what Kathy was describing. I'm sorry.
An attack of sanity. I like the way you put that, Kathy. But yeah, I mean, for me, I did not want to leave at all. I really wanted reconciliation. I loved my local church. So I went through the whole, like, quote unquote, proper church order, thinking and being told by a lot of leaders that, this is going to work out, right? Like, this is wrong, that so many pastors and elders have called you horrible names. They've slandered you, they're plotting against you. Like, this is pretty simple stuff. And yet I found myself going to, like, these regional presbytery meetings and more publicly being mocked, having zero voice, not being able to say a word while that's happening, and demeaned, having my work completely misrepresented, watching pastors and elders behave like lawyers, bad ones. It was like they were in costumes, and Christ wasn't there. And, I tried to let, the pen was taken from my story. And the male leaders took it upon themselves to take my case to the next level and to the next level. And it was, every step of the way was more traumatizing. And I kept trying to be like the mature one, and to have this opportunity for reconciliation, have this opportunity for reform. And I was in therapy and with a well-known counselor for who specializes in spiritual abuse. And he said to me, Aimee, what makes you think that you need to be a missionary in your own church? And that was very clarifying for me because I realized, the church shouldn't be the mission field, and I don't need to be a missionary. And like, that's not how church should function for me. Like, I've been asking this whole time, am I safe? Which it was clear that I wasn't. And yet what I should be asking is like, why isn't is my family growing and thriving and fructifying here in this church? And so that was when I realized, okay, I stayed way too long. I was trying to show my kids that you try to stay and make things work, and you work for reform and don't just be a leaver, And I realized that I had to now show them, especially as more and more stories were coming to me with spiritual abuse, and I was like seeing behind the curtain, that my staying is a complicity in my own abuse. And it's also a complicity in the abuse of others in that system. So that's when I really, said, okay, it's time.
You made an obscene gesture and left.
Yes, sometimes you got to go, and that's the thing that you got to do.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't want I don't want to curse that church. I don't wish them ill harm or the denomination, but it certainly was harmful for me to stay.
Of course it was, George.
Aimee, back to the book, but kind of referencing something you mentioned in the section on the fractured face. You quote Donald McLeod saying, I hope that while I still have much to learn, I don't have too much to unlearn. And you kind of related that to repentance. And talk a little more about that, and we may have to continue on the other side. But
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I quoted that in a former book of mine thinking, like, I don't want to get to the end of my life and have too much to unlearn. And now I realize, whoa, I have a lot to unlearn. And that's actually a good thing. And I do equate unlearning, like, how can we repent without unlearning? Because when we are sinning, we are following a lie about something. So to be able to see the truth, to see what's real, and to turn away from it, there's unlearning involved. And that can be a glorious and wonderful thing to just say, oh, I got this wrong.
I don't. I'm ordained. hey, we're got to back out for a little bit, but we're coming back. We're talking to Aimee Byrd, and the book is Saving Face, Finding Myself, God, and One Another Outside a Defaced Church. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss this. Hey, thanks for spending time with us. By the way, if you haven't yet subscribed to the weekly Key Life email, you're missing out. So while you're thinking about it, well, not now, wait till the program's over. Go to keylife.org/subscribe. And it's free, so you can't complain.
Aimee, before the break, during the break, we were kind of chatting about how our conversations are usually kind of organic and just kind of go where they go, and don't go off a prescribed set of questions. And that leads me to go to number 9 from the list of questions we're supposed to ask you from your PR person. This is very well put together, by the way, but it does have me curious. Question number 9 is, why were you afraid to be angry at God? I don't feel like we have any context leading up to this, so
I didn't know question number 9, so that's interesting.
Oh, wait, that's for a different book.
That's for next week's interview,
that's
Matthew.
A different one.
No, I do journal about that in the book because and I remember some teaching on never be angry with God. Like that is sinful, right? God is holy, and it would be sinful to show your anger to God. And I was listening to this podcast who's a Christian therapist, and he's talking about how sometimes, we just got to let it rip before God. Let your anger, like as if God doesn't know what's in your heart, and why aren't we wrestling with him with our true feelings? Not cursing God or by any means, but being honest about our anger. And, he went to scripture as well. And, the words of Job, even parts where, there was lines crossed, like with Jonah. But, so I kind of talk about that in one of my journal entries, my struggle to do that, but to be able to recognize, I do. I feel maybe abandoned a little bit, especially somebody who, has some abandonment issues from childhood, from divorce, so to be able to say that to God really improved my intimacy with God, I felt like, because I think that's what prayer is. It's an intimacy, and it's a digging out of your whole self before God and learning who this God is. It's not just coming with your canned requests, and your canned blessings. I kind of talk in my book group that I have coming up about how I was taught to pray using the acronym ACTS, and you come before God with adoration and then the confession, and all this. And I just think, oh my gosh, how phony is that? Do we talk to each other that way? You think of doing like a professional book review and doing your compliment sandwich before you give the critique or something like that. I mean, it's also manipulative, as if we can manipulate God with our great words and organization. So I feel like he wants us to know our real selves. He wants us to be in touch with our actual feelings. And then there's a surprise in there, because we can repent of the wrong ways we think about God. Our anger has information with it. Like, oh, I thought God was contractual, transactional. Like, if I do this for you, then I deserve this. That's not who God is. And he's much bigger than this box I put him in. So I think we can discover a lot of things that we get wrong if we can just be honest about our feelings, which God knows our feelings better than we do. We need to know them.
That's so true. In fact, the most free place, I read your books, and I know from others, if we'll take off our mask, we learn something. But the only place where I wear no mask and I'm totally free to dance or sing or cuss or spit or tell God, you did this to me, and if you loved me, you wouldn't have. The only place where that is totally true is in his presence. And that becomes the gasoline that makes some of the other possible.
Aimee, at one point you reference Song of Solomon, Song of Songs, and made an interesting observation that I hadn't seen before, but it's opened and closed with using the metaphor of the the woman being the bride of Christ, with her making the initial contact, and sort of God looking to us to present ourselves and then closing out the conversation and so forth, but allowing us to sort of present ourselves to God. Am I picking that up right? I mean, it was an interesting
so that
observation.
was such a healing book for me. When I was going through the pain, the Song of Songs, because I think that, for one thing, I thought truth was such a doctrinal matter. And, and here we have something that a prepositional statement can't teach us about God. And it's in poetry, it's in song, it's in metaphor and allegory between Christ's love, the love of the incarnate Christ for his church, his bride, his people. And here we have the woman's voice, representative of the church, opening and closing the song. She bursts on the scene saying what she wants, and it's intimate. It's even erotic. Like she wants to be in his inner chambers. This woman names her abuse in 2 night scenes by leaders. And, she names her abuse by her brothers as well. She says when she can't find God, like, where are you? I can so identify with this woman. And I love it because you have the scene too where the male figure, the lover, is beckoning her out from the clefts of the rock, which kind of reminds me of when God hid Moses between the clefts of the rock because he could not see his face and live. But here you have the Christ figure beckoning this woman out from the clefts of the rock, and he says, let me see your face. Let me hear your voice, because your face is lovely and your voice is sweet. I wasn't told that by the leaders in my church. I was told to shut my voice up. Literally, why doesn't she shut up and make us some sandwiches? So, to hear the opposite of that, and it's so evangelical, right? Like he's calling this woman out to see his face and live because of Jesus. Because of Jesus, we can do that. And to tell others of his great love for us, and that is lovely and sweet.
He wants to see our face.
Aimee, we're out of time, and it's God's fault. And I'm gonna tell him.
Yeah,
To
get
giving
mad.
us more time. Aimee, you're fun, and we love you. Thank you for taking your mask off and being willing to deal with what happens with that. That helps us all. God bless you, girl.
Thank you. I love talking to you guys.
And we do too. And you keep writing, and we'll keep talking. Or if you don't write, we'll talk anyway.
Indeed.
Guys, there's one more short segment in which we will reveal to you the amazing guest who'll be here next week. I don't know, but it will be amazing. Don't go anywhere. Oh man, what a good hour. One of the things, and we didn't talk about it, if you decide I'm not gonna play these games anymore. I'm gonna say what I think, and I'm gonna be who I am. Some of it's good and some of it's bad. Some of it is shocking. Some of it is comforting. I'm just gonna do that. Well, you're really not. You're gonna do some of it. But as you do some of it, you begin to see the reaction. It's either extreme anger directed at you, and Aimee experienced some of that, or it's extreme respect and love. And then the other person begins to take off their mask, and pretty soon Jesus shows in the relationship. So there's a positive input to taking off the mask. But it's hard. Be careful when you do it, and make sure that you can trust the people before whom you do it. If you can't, they'll kill you. Unless you're as mean as they are, and I am, and that's the way I have survived. But it's what the church is supposed to be, a place without masks, a place where Jesus comes and we see his face that shines on us. By the way, I forgot to tell you, the new magazine is out. Key Life magazine, the lead story, Perverting the Gospel. And you can get a free copy of this print magazine. by going to keylife.org/free magazine. Boy, we do a lot of free stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start charging and then give me a raise, okay?
Yeah.
And I will give you all a raise, too.
Okay.
Yeah, appropriate to talk about needing support during tax time.
Yeah, that's right. I'm acting like I have the power. I don't anymore.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
I used
what?
to. George is the president. Yeah, all right. Who's going to be here next week?
Next week, our good and dear friend Ray Ortland is going to be with us. And Ray has I was looking, when the books arrived, they're just a tiny, tiny little package. It's a little itty bitty book, but it's got a great big huge title. It's called Good News at Rock Bottom, Finding God When the Pain Goes Deep and Hope Seems Lost. So he's either telling us really good stuff in a very short period of time, or there's no hope.
And the title is bigger than the book.
And the title is bigger than the
Make
book.
sure the
Chapter
pages
1.
aren't
Good
blank.
luck.
Ray is a fun guest. Join us next week, same time, same place. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. That gives you a wide, wide berth.
I did think that when I saw the title. I thought, it's not a very big book for that big a title, you know.
We might need to clarify that.
I didn't see that till I turned to the last page.
All good. You did it well.